Everyone, welcome to the Xoogler School's first fireside chat series with Amit Singh. Amit was the president of Google Cloud. He also ran Google's initiatives in AR and VR before moving to Palo Alto Networks, where he's the president. In this role, he is responsible for all go-to-market functions, including sales, support, consulting, business development, partnerships, and enablement. And he's a graduate Rensselaer with a master's degree there, as well as Delhi College of Engineering. He loves giving back to the younger folks in their career, including the Girl Scouts. We saw that a lot of initiatives you're involved with there, Amit. So thank you so much for giving up your time for the Xoogler School and giving your advice around what people should be doing to get themselves ready during this time. So I also made note that you actually moved from Boston to San Francisco, but you're still a big fan of all things Boston with sports and everything. So
that's right. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
I guess to start with, let's talk about your own time in college. And if you were to go back and actually give yourself some advice, if you're a college senior or junior, what advice would you give yourself looking back?
Yeah, wear a mask. Look, I feel like what a moment for all of you as college seniors, some of you taking some time, between college and work or between high school and college. And that's the right thing to do, good time to step back and apply for learnings. I guess my biggest concern for my younger self was I didn't take as many risks early as I could have when I had the least to lose. So, all of you listening in, chances are you don't have that many responsibilities, right? You don't have kids, you can take a lot more chances. And I see too many people settle in for the safe career choice because that's a job. And look, in some cases you have to, I'm not trying to judge anybody, but where you have to provide for yourself and you have to kind of get off the parents' payroll and this, that. But even in the choices you have to make, there's a spectrum of risk. And I believe, I took the safest path. I was a software engineer at Oracle. It was a big enough company at that time. This is 1990. And I could have taken a few more chances earlier on, which I would suggest actually would have had a disproportionate impact. Because first of all, I would have learned a ton, right? And that risk wouldn't have really, the reward ratio would be much higher because the risk element is lower, right? If you think about it just mathematically. And that's what I would have, that advice I would give myself and I would give to all of you. This is the right time early on to take as many chances as you can before you get into a stage where you have to kind of, where stuff starts to matter a bit more.
Mm-hmm. No, thank you for sharing that. And also, are there specific frameworks or thoughts on how to assess these risk-reward structures as someone is thinking about, a lot of our audience are going to be college juniors, seniors, some even freshmen, how should they be thinking about this?
Yeah. So look, the highest risk is, and by the way, the risk is measured not just, there's opportunity cost, right? There's time, and there's money, right? Like some combination of these things. Chances are you have a lot of time, but you have to make a certain amount of money. And you have to see, and by the way, everyone has a different tolerance for that risk level. So you have to say, look, how high is my risk quotient in all of this? On one end of the spectrum is, I'm going to start my own business, right? I'm going to take a loan or I'm going to raise capital and start my own business. There's no money coming in potentially and some amount going out. Hopefully your burn rate is low early on in your career. You're not going out and going on fancy vacations or whatever. You have modest needs. And that's why I feel like your risk tolerance is going to be the highest at that time if you can do those things. And on the other end of the spectrum is a job with Accenture or something like that. They're going to grind you down. No offense, I love Accenture. But you're going to work hard. You're going to work really hard, lot of hours, and you're a guaranteed paycheck. So that's pretty low on the risk. And somewhere in that spectrum, you have to decide what the right thing is for you, based on your family circumstances, your own needs, and so on and so forth. I would just urge you to at least make a thoughtful choice in that spectrum, a considered choice. Take a look at it. You may still say no to it because you have these needs on the other end, but at least investigate all options and then make a decision based on all that thought.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. So why don't we actually do a bit of introduction to Palo Alto Networks itself? Because a lot of our audience may not know much about it. Could you explain about what the company is, what it does, but also what kind of entry-level jobs are there at Palo Alto?
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, I would have expected that question. The Palo Alto Networks is the leading cybersecurity company in the world. We're roughly between 4 and 5 billion in revenue, growing fast. In fact, the pandemic helps cybersecurity because everybody's always online, and the more people are online, the more they are at risk of getting hacked and so on. We help large companies, governments around the world, hospitals, financial services companies, basically secure themselves to prevent a cybersecurity attack. In fact, if you look at some of the big ones that have been mentioned in the press recently, a single cyber security attack can completely paralyze a company and you can basically lose 10% of your market capitalization, which for some companies is $2, $3, $5 billion. So this is one of the biggest growth industries out there within the technology sector, and we are the largest player in that industry. And to answer your question, look, we are hiring. We are hiring like crazy. Thousands of jobs being added to our company and frankly to the industry. So I would urge you to look at this industry seriously. And applying for jobs is like simply go to the website, and we have all the jobs listed there. Upload your resume and be persistent in trying to get an interview.
No, that makes sense. One of the things we had shared in a session earlier today was how important it is to do projects or get experience in a field of choice. And I know a few of our students will be going online now and looking on your careers page and looking at the experience required. But if someone was back in college and looking to get some more experience and perhaps do the right classes or courses or projects to prepare themselves to stand out in front of Palo Alto Networks, are there specific classes, courses, or even projects they should be doing or thinking about doing?
Yeah. Look, depending on the field of your choice, technical fields would, you have a STEM degree, data science, computer science, anything related to AI. These are all great skills to have, not just for us, but for anybody, frankly. In the business side of it, if you've done specific classes in SEO or outbound telemarketing or communication skills where you're strong persuasion background, projects, and frankly, projects are so much more beneficial. First of all, in learning, you learn a lot by doing a project and doing an internship and that kind of thing. And as an employer, we certainly look for folks who are coming in, beyond their degree, what kind of experience they bring in project management and the kind of experiences they have with, summer jobs, internships, and that kind of thing. And we look at the complete individual to make a decision. But those are some of the things I would recommend.
No, that is helpful. Thank you. And I guess even if you look back again, right, taking yourself back to when you were in college, how did you choose your first job out of college? And if you think of as you said, you mentioned take as more risk if possible, but were there certain things you learned for your first job out of college or an internship that some of our members of the audience should actually perhaps look and explore and learn those same skills and
yeah. Look, I came here for my master's, like new to the country, and didn't really know. There was no internet, at that time. So we had to go to the library to find things. And I found my job through a traditional campus interview. And that was also during that time period was a recession. So not dissimilar to what we have here. But that part of the market, databases and, large amounts of data kind of coming off of the mainframe into client service systems was a big deal. So I sort of, focused on that segment, and Oracle was the biggest new entrant in that space. And I had trained as an industrial and electrical engineer with a sort of minor in computer science. So that was the obvious choice was, and they needed technical roles. So I would have loved to go into business right out of the bat, but they weren't hiring. And frankly, those were days where mostly people from my background would go into technical roles, right? And so there's certainly some level of barriers to overcome there. But I got a great job as a software engineer, but within a year and a half or so, I realized that, look, writing code late at night is not my thing. I'm a people person. I want to spend time there. And so I kind of made a side move within Oracle to move to a business type of career. So, my advice on that is, I think the biggest way to find jobs is internships and networking. Okay, those are the two primary methods. People people you are in your network, and if you don't have a network, build a network. I'm shocked by how few people actually send me a direct message on LinkedIn. That doesn't mean all of you do it. I have limited time, but people don't actually ask for help. And, not everyone's willing to help, but some people are. And take the time to introduce yourself. Look, here's what I stand for. Here's what I've done. I need your help. And could you introduce me to X, Y, and Z? And some set of people in your network who you know well, frankly, will help you in making those introductions. And you just have to keep at it. You have to keep that process going, keep the networks going, keep the calls and emails and LinkedIn messages flying for you to have the maximum set of opportunities that then you can pick from.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you, Amit. And in the earlier session today, we also mentioned how it's important for someone to have a strong online profile to show their experience and background in this space.
For sure.
Where you're probably going to respond to someone who has been blogging about cybersecurity versus a cold email where there's nothing about cybersecurity.
Absolutely. I find even LinkedIn profiles be so not well put together, or typos in it, or not all their work is presented there. Seems like it's just they went to school and that's pretty much it. Where's the extra stuff? Where's the, I did this with my free time. I did a blog here, or I volunteered there. Those are valuable things for employers to know so that they can make a judgment on, your candidacy.
So I'm going to go flip over to the Dory question. So for those who are joining on YouTube Live or even to Zoom, please go to the Dory. There's been some upvotes. You remember Dory, right?
Sure.
From the Google days. So the first question that's been upvoted a few times was, besides participating in Capture the Flags, what recommendations do you have for someone who's interested in cybersecurity and wants to pursue a career/internship in that field?
Yeah. We have internships. We open them up. You can apply, but we are one of hundreds of companies that offer these kinds of things, and should study the industry, take a look, profile the top 20, 30 companies, and, internships open in the fall typically for the next year. And, we'll be going through that process. So most people have an internship page, and you can it's pretty straightforward stuff.
Thank you. And similar to that, in terms of thinking about careers and what they should be exploring. So another question came in regarding about the level of graduate education. Is a better choice for going to, is it an MS or a PhD?
Yeah. I'm personally a believer that, higher education always is helpful. I typically would suggest get some work experience before you go to higher education, but sometimes that's not always possible. Frankly, right now, who knows what will happen with COVID? So some people are making the decision to just go directly into graduate school, and that's a good idea too. Typically, employers like us will look positively on more education. More education is always a good thing. Now you can self-educate. You can go on, different online MOOCs and get it from there. You can go to a school. I think, frankly, education will change in the coming years, where education will come in different fashions, not just going to a physical school, because every school is a virtual school now. And, within that, there's a set of classes. There are some that offer very specific cybersecurity curriculums, right? And we've helped them build those curriculums. So please look those up. But there are specific things that cybersecurity, if you want to go to the technical field, right? Like I said, computer science, AI, machine learning, those are good for everything. There are specific, like capture the flag and other set of curriculums offered from so many. Udacity has some and so on. Maybe even if you on the side, right? You don't want to go full time. You want to just take a course. There are so many online that are offered. Just take an associate degree in your community college or elsewhere online that can offer you a bit more skills so you can separate yourself from others and show your interest in that particular field, whatever the field might be.
Oh, that makes sense. Thank you. So another question from one of our students who has actually shown interest and also a background in quantum computing is like, what impact do you think will quantum computing have on the cybersecurity industry? Also, how can you prepare for a job that doesn't exist yet?
It's huge. It's huge. It exists actually. So we, when I moved from Google over here, over the last couple of years, we've really been investing in building up our bench strength in machine learning, AI, and then all the underlying technologies help support large data, analytics in real time of large data. And quantum computing will help with that overall journey. And we've actually started introducing the first set of products in the last 6 to 9 months that are AI-based products. The first, like machine learning-based firewall, all the way to like finding unknown threats in a data lake using machine learning. And we've built some really incredible products on the backs of that technology, and we are a market leader in that space. And so you'd see, what's happening is large nation states, industrial hacking and espionage is using machine learning and AI to attack critical infrastructure around the world. Try and, for example, disrupt elections, try and steal COVID vaccine secrets, try and create confusion in governments around the world, whether it's election or otherwise. Try and disrupt a competitor by locking up all their computing infrastructure. So this is a field that's going to continue to evolve. It's evolving fast. Physical infrastructure, attacking your oil and gas pipeline or utility infrastructure to disrupt a nation. It's terrible. It's the new Cold War. It's the new way like nations are conducting warfare at a low level, but the consequences can be really high. If you look at, there are cities that are shut down. They can't send in checks because some hacker or some state locked up their computers asking for ransomware, and now they're dead in the water. And so it's an area that's going to continue to need talent, and any talent that's using data sets, machine learning, AI, and so on to help compete against the bad guys is going to be very valuable.
And you had mentioned going to, perhaps if it's not at the traditional universities, going to a lot of the MOOCs to try to prepare those courses. But one of the follow-up question was talking about how do you prepare for a job that doesn't exist yet? And I think it's more of a general question, specifically for quantum computer penetration testing, is his interest.
Look, I think may not be exact jobs for that yet, but there are jobs or skills, let's say, that lead to that. So learn what pen testing is, basically, right? Try that. Learn techniques around AI and ML. Try that, so you combine and build. Knowledge is gained not in one fell swoop, but you build on something and you continue to make yourself unique by the perspectives from different points of view that bring in through that knowledge base.
Thank you. So why don't we've gone sort of very deep. Let's go sort of take it out a bit. One of the questions came in is talking about your role as the president of Palo Alto Networks. And they're just interested to know, what is a role like that like? So imagine someone who has no idea about Palo Alto Networks, or perhaps tech in general as well. What do you do every day? And could you sort of share that?
Yeah, look, I do everything from talk to clients, tell them about our strategy, just like I was telling you a little bit about it. I hire and motivate senior executives. I run the business, which means, manage day-to-day operations of the company, from clients who may have been hacked and help them, assure them that we're on the job, to managing, I'm almost like 6,000 people who work in my organization, managing their careers, managing financials, managing revenue. And so it's busy. It's a lot of different things going on. But in the end, senior leadership roles are about three things. Okay. One is about talent. You want to have the best team. Okay. Best team, and finding and, nurturing that team. The second is about setting culture, living and building a culture that's great, that's welcoming, that's collaborative, can be fun, yet accountable. You take chances, yet you hold, give people a safety net where they don't feel like they'll fail. So it's that culture. And the third thing is having strong operational processes and metrics that you can implement, put in place. Everybody knows what they are, and you sort of run the business in that fashion. Those are roughly three things that senior people spend their time on.
Great, thank you for sharing that. Let's actually talk more about the culture. Because I think whether it's your own long career in Oracle, almost 19 years, Google, both in Google Cloud, leading the organization, as well as the AR and VR team, and now at Palo Alto Networks, how do all the cultures differ? And how should someone think about themselves as a potential employee for those companies, but also other companies, and how they could best utilize their time and efforts?
Sure. Look, I think cultures are very much set up by leaders. Leaders build and live the culture. And honestly, I'd rather just focus on our culture. Oracle is Oracle, and we can certainly talk about that at some other time. But at Palo Alto Networks, the culture is one of growth. It's a growth mindset, right? Growth mindset, think big, grow fast. And that just doesn't mean grow in business. Grow, like we went from a single product company to multi-product company. We went from a hardware focused company to cloud and software focused company. And so we've been, over the last couple of years, since at least I've gotten here, it's a growth mindset. And that's it's the one definition of culture. The second one is around everything is in balance. We don't get too crazy one way or the other way. We try and keep ourselves stable and balanced. And that's really helped us in COVID. We have long-term plans. We have a North Star. We stay focused on that, and so on. And the third thing is sort of how you treat people, the openness, the collaboration. We are a very flat company. We all talk to each other constantly. This morning I put something on Slack about mental health and how I try and manage my energy at a time when, you can feel very isolated, right? And, there's hundreds of responses of people talking about what they do. And so, my view, and I frankly, kudos to Google. I learned this skill at Google, is it's an open, collaborative culture, a culture where there's a lot of listening, a lot of empathy, and trying to, yet at the same time that we get shit done, man. We hold people accountable, including ourselves, and set the goals high, and expect high results from that. So these things can coexist, and so very proud of what we've built here, and look to kind of continuing that tradition here.
No, I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges we have these days, besides fighting the coronavirus and obviously in California, the fires and what's happening. But in terms of mental health wellness, what advice do you have for someone who is in their could be 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, someone in that age group in terms of mental wellness. What kind of feedback or practices would you recommend?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I tell my kids. I have kids of that age. So, there's in fact, what I posted in Slack was something similar. One big thing that is, first of all, it's true for this time, but it's also true for the generation that I'm talking to. It's an always on generation. Okay. That always on takes a big toll on you. It takes a toll and you feel anxious and you can feel like a sense of anxiety is the best way to describe it. And that comes from technology and that online world you live in every day. Okay, the amount of time you do. There is absolute truth in this, that screen time equals to stress time. Okay, so best way to do is disconnect, go for a walk, get some exercise, listen to music, get good amount of rest. And it's hard to do. I'm not saying it's easy, but even building that into your day, just a little bit throughout the day, will help you manage your energy. For example, my notifications have been off for almost a year, even before pandemic. No notifications, no Gmail, no WhatsApp, no nothing. And I put my phone away and I have a designated space where I work, so that once I'm out of that space, I do not look at work email. I'm now into my personal life versus my work life, because I'm working at home all the time. And so it's, and frankly, the pandemic doesn't help in where you're trying to get a job. And, I totally, empathize with that thing. Finding ways to connect with others that aren't always, like that social media, these things are not, honestly, they're not good for your mental health. And I would limit them. I'm not saying they're wrong or anything. Staying in touch with loved ones online, social media is a good thing, but don't spend more than X amount of time on it. Go read a book or go for a walk or call a friend on the phone or check in, call your mother. I'm sure she'd love to hear from you. And so those are things that I would do to try and lessen the load, the cognitive load that your brain takes. And there have been studies on this. When you're on this, it's like crack. You're getting that dopamine hit and you get so used to it. And I'm guilty of that. There are times when you just get into a cycle and you have to get yourself off that. And you'll be so much happier and so much more balanced about it. And if you can, learn how to meditate or something, just for 5 minutes a day. Get one of the meditation apps, just follow along. It's very simple. Don't have to do much.
Thank you, Amit. I want to go back to something you mentioned about growth mindset and thinking big in terms of how you set strategy and culture with that. For a lot of students, they haven't heard of growth mindset yet. And also, I understand you're also a big fan of books. If any books, research that they can go look at the libraries, can go look online when libraries are open again, and perhaps even explore some books themselves about growth mindset, and books that you recommend someone early in their career should be reading to prepare themselves for what you find important. What should they be exploring and learning?
Yeah. Look, I think some of it just comes from within, where if you're a curious person, you're curious about something, just follow your natural curiosity. Don't give it up. The only way, however, you'll be able to follow it if you let your brain be calm enough for those ideas to come out. If you're constantly keeping yourself busy by going from a Zoom meeting to watching that Netflix show to checking your Snapchat story of a friend or posting something on Instagram, you will have no time to actually have a growth mindset. You're then a slave of all these, products, where you're the product actually in those areas. No offense to my friends at Facebook and Google, but you're the product. And what's your agenda? How are you following your agenda? So if you think deeply about it, you need space and time to think about it, to let those ideas and desires emerge. I'd love to learn about history. I've become a history buff recently, read a lot of like history. David McCullough is my favorite author. Just pick up any book of David McCullough. I mean, it'll delight you. And I never liked history growing up, right? Just started cooking, I don't know anything about cooking, subscribe to the New York Times cooking thing because I found it somewhere, and amazing recipes. I'll pretty much like follow it one step, super slow, right? But what the hell? You got to try these things. So growth mindset is an attitude. It's an attitude that you can build by just listening to things that you desire, that aren't all these digital things that you are forced to look at because that's the culture out there. And once you do, natural stuff will come up. You'll become curious, and you'll take a class here, and you'll go do read a research paper there, and that kind of thing. And look, there are great books out there. Good to Great. If you're in business, how to write a great veto letter. And it's free. It's online. Go check it out. But the idea is, did you learn something new today, or this week, or this month? If the answer is no, then you're making a huge mistake in your career. This is this time where you should be acquiring skills. You're in skills acquisition mode. And it's the time also you can learn the most number of things. So don't waste it on, TikTok for 4 hours. There are people who spend that much time. I mean, okay, yeah, it amused you a little bit, but, please don't do that.
Thank you. So one of the questions also came in, and you had also mentioned about new things and where there's new books, things like that. But the question was specific about new ideas in technology. So what are some of the new ideas in technology that keep you excited for the future?
Yeah. Look, I've spent most of my time in one part of technology, so I can certainly talk about that part more authoritatively than others, which is the application of large-scale data to everything and using either AI or automation to solve those problems. Can you guys still hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, something happened on my laptop here. I don't know what, but anyway, hopefully you can still see me. And it's a trend that's a generational trend, right? Applying automation, machine learning, intelligence to everything you do. Because the first phase of our technology was very much a demand oriented. So I want to do this, go to a computer, and it gives you that. Second phase of this, which is the thing we are in now, is ambient computing that's always on, is listening to your needs, almost anticipates it, gives it to you. That's based on you, your needs, and so on. And that's why what you see in some of these platforms is technology has learned your behavior. The reason it's highly tailored to you is because your click history, what you viewed, what you did, what you said, has all created a profile that then goes out and delivers you information that you may find useful, right? That thinking can be applied to everything. That can be applied to enterprise software. That can be applied to building new products. It can be applied to a variety of different things. You have, I'm invested in a startup where AI is being used to write software, and there's plenty of them out there, and so on. So those are large data sets, AI, automation. These are trends, large scale trends that I think will impact. And frankly, with the pandemic coming, cloud computing will accelerate and change. Every business is becoming a digital business, frankly. And work from home is not just a short-term trend. This is what we're going to be doing for a long period of time. People will be, think about it, right? You could be living in Hawaii and doing your job for as far as I'm live wherever you want. We showed for the last 6 months, and we'll show for the next year at least, that work can be done from anywhere. Okay, that'll change everything, right? That'll change how real estate happens. Do we need all these buildings? I don't know. maybe not. And so, a lot of changes in the air, and it's a frankly great time to come into business.
Thank you for sharing all those pieces of new technologies that people can go research on.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of concern about resumes and what stands out. So perhaps not about resumes you review for your senior leaders, but perhaps your own kids. Are there specific projects you advise them to perhaps put in your resume, on their resumes? I think any things that stand out they should really be working.
I would say if you put a project, one thing that I find, like I look at plenty of young people's resumes, is like describe the project, but talk about what you delivered, right? Like the ROI of the project. Many people say worked on XYZ. Like, okay, so many people work on these. Is like, but if you can make it very specific, worked on project with 5 people, led the project, delivered it on time, resulting in X amount of savings for the company, or had the outcome of doing a research paper that got awarded, or like some project result is missing from many projects. They just say they worked on certain projects, and you're left to kind of deduce, is it a good project? Did it go well? Is it a bad project? And what was your role in all of that? If you can explain a little bit more, that would be useful.
I think the summary is not about specifically the project itself. Is that what?
No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the project is. Like, yeah.
Exactly. Thank you. So someone who's trying to be more risk-taking is asking, what is your advice for someone going into a field that has a lot more risk in terms of risk and security, but potentially a huge payoff, such as music, sports, entrepreneurship, art, all these type of fields? Any advice?
Look, the risk reward in entrepreneurship is the highest. You can actually be a world-class musician and have great rewards, but risk is much higher than being an entrepreneur, because there's very few that make it to the symphony, right? And the reward in terms of at least financial reward, there's plenty of, sort of being part of the arts, and that cultural reward is so great on its own right. So I'm not taking that part of it. I'm just talking financial reward right now, because you can have all the money in the world but still be miserable. So that doesn't help anything either. But if you look at just from that lens, the ROI in entrepreneurship is the highest. So I would say as soon as you can get a little bit of skill set behind you, have a thesis on something, go follow that. Be an entrepreneur of some kind in that particular area.
A couple of Xoogler School students have great abilities in multiple languages. They have different expertise in different things. Do you look at all these interesting non-work related things when you look at resumes?
Yeah, usually when I do an interview, other than like if they've come through the gauntlet of interviews, chances are that they know they have the skills. I actually try and take one idea that they may have done that's unique to them and spend some time on it. This gentleman is coming in Europe to do leadership role. He's a huge camper. Like he used to go out in an RV and camp. So I'm like, well, tell me about camping. How did you get into it? What happened? How did you learn about it? And I followed his journey from a basic camper all the way to like expert. He goes into parts of Sweden that are completely unexplored, and he's ruggedized his campers. He has 3 of them, and how he converted them from one to the other. That's interesting. The guy has passion. He followed that passion. He actually learned something, and he did something pretty unique that nobody's done. Those are things that tell you that this person has a growth mindset, that they will go chase that down, whatever that thing might be.
Something different. And I think that's a lot of googliness when you look at resumes, right? Yes, you can do the job, perhaps going to a good school, but what else are you interested in? We want boring employees.
Could be anything. Yeah. Could be anything.
So the question was about imposter syndrome, talking about being expert in something else. Have you had imposter syndrome, and how did you deal with it?
No, I never had it. No, I don't usually speak until I know a lot about something. So no, I spent a lot of time, preparing for things, and so no, never had that.
So preparation is not how you have it.
Yeah.
Another question came in about how individuals can think about applying for large companies like the last 3 you worked at versus making an impact. And how should someone think about going into a company as an intern or just an entry-level employee? Can they make impact, and how should they be thinking about impact?
Look, I think, yeah, it's a great question. I know I'm so happy that this generation, my kids' generation, is so focused on having impact. And you can have impact every day. Large, small, that's not the issue. It's not the issue about the size of company. You can impact your work group by taking a position on stances. You can have an impact on causes that you can advocate for. Every company of any size has outlets where you can self-organize, you can create clubs, you can advocate and build a nonprofit on the side. You can do all sorts of things. It's you can impact, but the team by leading them down giving. I mean, so there's so much that's possible. It's really dependent on you taking a proactive stance on that, finding how you can make that impact. But any of those companies, and frankly, most companies in the world, will have opportunities where you can have an impact.
No, I think to make it some more practical, on my own experience, my first job out of college was at Expedia, and it was when Expedia bought hotels.com. And they needed a playbook to be written for hotels.com employees to know the Expedia systems. So no one asked me to do that.
Yeah,
based on training.
Just volunteer, like, hey, I'm happy to help out in something new. You'll have an impact that way. Yeah. Doesn't always have to be social impact. You can impact your colleagues by making their life easier, right?
So sort of a bit related to that, what types of opportunities or programs did you engage in as an employee to make yourself more successful or promotable? What are the secrets of your success, Amit?
It's just like, there's no secret. I mean, it's like what you hear about, the trite things. Like, I worked longer hours than everybody. I read more books and engaged in, I took did classes to learn about business when I didn't know about it, like at night and that kind of thing, because I felt like I need to get some skills in that particular area. And, I've always tried to learn from others. I think, observing other people, being humble enough to say, like, wow, that person presents so well. Presentation skills are so good. How do I make that part? So I'd approach them and get their feedback and try and make it. So a lot of it was on the job stuff. It's not more nothing magical really. It's just, some pretty basic things you can, but I've always wanted to want to get a little bit better every day. And I just kind of have that constant desire to learn something, and that's been of help.
And even, let's say today, I'm sure you get a lot of reports and even your email, but how do you consume cutting edge content, whether it's specific blogs, it's specific, it's on Twitter? How do you actually consume all this information that you want to make sure you're up to date on the right?
Yeah, I'm very interested these days in politics. And so I've gone out and researched political trends, and I read extensively, and now because I've got the good fortune of knowing a lot of people. I've gone and talked to governors in different states and try to understand what they're trying to go do and why. And once I get interested in something, I spend a lot of time on it. I go very, very deep in that particular area. I don't spend much time on, I do once in a while. Twitter, it's not a great place. Honestly, most social media stuff is a bunch of noise and a lot of talking heads. There's serious writing happens off the grid. It doesn't happen online. Very little is detailed enough where you can engage in deep, thoughtful articles that have nuance, Foreign Affairs, Economist, Atlantic. These are places where you can have a deep, interesting thought process, which isn't your clickbait, 3 paragraphs on BuzzFeed. I spend no time on that.
No, that makes sense. Pick up one of those issues, right? So you mentioned about taking risks. So the question came in was, if you go back to university today, what risk would you take in education career? What would you study in?
I would do something around AI, machine learning. Yeah, I would, and data science, something like that. Those would be the three areas I'd focus on. I would go for tech, me personally, based on like my knowledge. I'm not saying that's the best thing. By the way, there's plenty of great things in art around, health sciences, public health would be a great area if you were interested in that. I think and I think post-pandemic, you'll see massive sort of disaggregation of the arts, lots of arts available, and you can find ways to, so there's plenty of things, like my persuasion as I'm an engineer would be in those areas.
So this is coming in from a rising senior recruiting for entry-level jobs. It's been difficult to imagine my longer-term career trajectory and plan ahead, especially in light of unexpected events. I'm wondering about how to balance being spontaneous and taking risks versus planning out a career.
I think people, planning out a career should have a general sense for what you want to do, but I don't think you can plan out a career, frankly, at this age. You don't really even know what you like. I mean, you're just starting your career, so it makes no sense to have some of you might be like, I want to be this. And you will, it'll survive the test of time. I want to like be a CEO or president of a company, public. I am that. Kind of build my kind of trajectory slowly towards that. You are at the stage of acquiring skills and experiences. Focus on those. Okay. Learn what you love. If work is a grind for you, or you get a job and it sucks. I mean, there's a lot of jobs out there that'll be terrible. You're not gonna like it. There's no point in building a career in that, right? So first, right now is your age of learning, growing, and experiencing. I would focus on those things. Have some sense of what 5 years looks like. Like in 5 years, I'd like to go back to college. That's a reasonable thing to aspire towards. In 5 years, I would love to have an idea, built out enough, write a business plan, and get my startup funded. That's a good 5 years is the time frame you should think of your career journey on, not like anything less than that at this moment. That's just my view,
And when you look at your highest performers in your current company or your prior roles, have they done specific things that have impressed you, whether they've gone to do an MBA, they've gone to rotate overseas for rotations? Have they, as you said, right, there's someone who went really into going outdoors in Sweden, like what has really impressed you?
I think anytime you're looking at a resume of early in career people, the diversity of experiences matters, number one. Number two, and this is in no particular order, sort of the quality of their projects that they've done when they were doing their education, that matters to me. Look, different people can look at it differently, but we all have the access to the same pool of people. This is how we use the filters we use to differentiate who we kind of consider for roles.
No, that makes sense. So there's someone asking about, they've been out of school for a few years. Would you recommend returning to school for a master's? My current work does not relate to my educational background. So I thought it may help me reach my career goals. The career goals was to be education, getting more finance, career goals more in software engineering. So
yeah, it's very hard to pivot like that. So if you want to make a change in your field, you either go to an adjacent field that bridges between the two fields. So in your case, if you are in, say, finance going to software engineering, is that what the person want to do? So if you're going for finance, there's something called technical finance where you're writing models and programs and that kind of thing. That could be a potential bridge to engineering. But typically engineering is a very technical field where you need specific support, whether that's through an online set of classes or going back to school. But if you already know that that's what you want to do, you should just go do it. I think this is as good time as any when stuff is, challenges out there, you might as well go back and learn something new.
The questions come in about building the culture in your workspace. How have you intentionally created a welcoming work culture to all backgrounds at the places you have worked at and led?
So I think it starts with like building a environment where people feel comfortable communicating, connecting, talking, and like a culture where it's highly collaborative, right? And I've frankly tried to do that throughout my career. That's what we've done over here. We have very specifically tried to create very important goals around diversity of thought, diversity of underrepresented minorities and gender. And we have very specific goals around all that, and we're making great progress against it in an industry that's been traditionally very non-diverse, frankly. And then I spent a lot of time communicating, doing exactly what I'm doing here, talking to large groups of people, getting their feedback, answering questions. And frankly, leaders set the tone of all of that, because once my leadership team sees me doing a lot of these things, then they end up doing a lot of these things. And so culture starts at the top and flows downhill. So I spend a lot of time kind of trying to manage and build that culture that I just described to you.
Thank you. So a follow-up question from one of your earlier comments, but earlier you had mentioned that few people have reached out to you directly. I'm curious about the most memorable connections you've had with more junior professionals, and advice on building relationships with mentors that they can take from those experiences you've had.
Yeah. Look, chances are, like, if somebody sends you a blind thing, a request to become a friend, like, chances I'm not going to do that, right? Like on LinkedIn or whatever. If they give a small paragraph, like, I have done this, and here I looked at your thing, and this is the specific job that I think I'm going to be great for. Great. I'll forward it on to my recruiting people and say, hey, go take a look at this person. So, like, go do some work, try and connect with not just me, but whoever you believe. Learn about their background, plenty of YouTube videos, try and link with that person in some way. Be as specific as you can as what you be versus a generic email about something. I mean, that's not going to get you anywhere. Yep. And frankly, an introduction from somebody else that I know in my network that I respect and say, hey, that person said, no, those would be the ways to go about doing that.
And so the question came in about, what would your advice be for someone transitioning from a technical career to the business side?
Yeah, I think there's a bunch of business skills that would be great to learn. How to write well, how to communicate well. Those are soft skills that are hugely valuable, hugely valuable. You can learn about specific parts of business, whether that's finance or marketing or whatever. There's different things. But communication would be one area. Frankly, I'd encourage all of you to spend time on. Young people coming into our workforce that I see all the time lack, especially written skills, like how to present well. These are not things that, unfortunately have been, people have spent as much time as they should. Because in the end, you get so much time to make an impression. In a meeting with somebody senior, you got to make a mark of some kind, learn how to communicate with them, be confident, present well. Those are skills that I recommend highly.
Thank you. So question about the addictive tech we talked about before. What are ways in which college students can focus on building on ethical and humane tech?
Look, that's not a field I know much about. I think there are a set of startups, there are a set of, I had a friend, he's starting a new search engine, for example, it's a subscription service that, like, no ads, no tracking, no ads, right? There are social media, small closed networks. Like, you could do a WhatsApp thing. If you care so much about sharing with a group, do it on something that's not got that same kind of, and there's a bunch of others like that are built around providing you value without some of the addictive sort of nature of it. And by the way, I'm not there's a valuable purpose. Like, my mother-in-law is connected now to her grandkids through those mediums. So there's positive things to it. All I'm saying is anything in extremes. where that value trade-off goes off. And that value trade-off is in your control by your attention and time, right? If you're spending that much time on it, then that's your problem, frankly. You should spend less time on it. They could also make it less addictive and say, hey, put in timers, time for you to turn it off. Obviously, they're not going to do that.
So this is, I guess, very important for people who don't have a formal degree to think about jobs that could be paying more, which is in tech. Do you think that even without a formal degree, it is possible to land good tech jobs?
Even without a formal
degree. So I'm assuming that this person doesn't have a formal degree, so they have not studied formally.
Of any kind. No master, no bachelor's degree.
No bachelor's.
Yeah. Look, it's possible, but it's increasingly hard. And the reason is there's more people looking for jobs than not having jobs. But having said that, we have hired people who haven't had a formal degree. We have a veterans program where we've hired veterans that don't have a formal degree. We've hired people who are self-trained online. They may not have a degree, but they have the skills. Without the skills, there's no chance. You got to get the skills. So yeah, there are cases like that. It's hard to break out, to be very persistent. You have to showcase project work then. That project work took on massive meaning now, right? That better be great for it to offset not having a degree.
Makes sense. And then we're about to run out of time, Amit. So what haven't we covered that we should be sharing based on your background experience to college students, people in gap years, early in their careers that we haven't touched upon?
What haven't we covered? Is that what you asked?
Yeah, what haven't we covered?
Looks like you've done a great job. I can't think of anything.
No. So we sort of touched upon it at the start, but given your history at Oracle, where do you think the TikTok Oracle deal will go?
I have no idea. That's like such a strange move. I read that they're taking on only some of the operational parts of TikTok, maybe not the front end, the app and content management. I mean, at some level, the technical part of it, meaning running the back end and cloud, that makes sense, right? Like you could scale the product, but that's behind the scenes. But Oracle is not a consumer company, and so I'll be curious to see what they do with it. I have frankly no idea.
Well, any last words to the Xoogler School students?
I actually, first of all, if you're listening, chances are you've taken the time to actually learn something. I hope this was informative. My only thing is like, try and, my biggest lesson from everything else is if you can try and be balanced in your personal life, spend enough time in learning new things, acquiring new skills at this time, make sure you network enough. Don't ignore that. That's actually, think of it as work. Don't think of it as you have to build your network early on in your career, right? Now you have your school network, you have your parents' network, you have your community. There's ways to do it. It takes effort. You have to actually reach out to people, try and build that network. And so skills acquisitions and building your network are the two areas you can do. And you can do that at any time, pandemic or not. And I wish you all the best and good luck with your careers.
On that note, thank you, Amit, for giving up your time with us and reaching out to help Xoogler School students. We appreciate it.
All right. Hey, this was fun. Thanks, man. All right. Chat soon. Okay. Bye.